My parents made me confess to my brother's felonies when I was 17. The first time my parents asked me to lie to the police, I was 17 years old, and my brother had just killed someone. Not murdered. Killed. There's a legal difference, apparently. Vehicular manslaughter sounds cleaner than murder, less intentional, like the universe made a mistake instead of my brother making a choice. But the man was just as dead either way. His name was David Brennan. He was 43 years old. He had a wife and 2 daughters. He'd been crossing the street on his way home from his shift at the hospital where he worked as a physical therapist. My brother's car hit him at 50 miles per hour in a 35 zone. David Brennan flew 30 feet through the air and landed on the pavement with his skull cracked open like an egg. He died in the ambulance before they reached the emergency room. My brother didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He didn't even brake until he got home. I was doing calculus homework in my room when I heard the garage door open at 1 in the morning. Then I heard my brother's voice, high and panicked, and my parents' footsteps rushing down the stairs. I opened my door and listened. Trevor was crying. Not the kind of crying you do when you're sad. The kind you do when you're terrified, when you know you've done something that can't be undone. I heard my mom say, "Show us the car." I heard the door to the garage open. Then I heard my mother scream. Not a long scream, just one short, sharp sound that got cut off like someone had covered her mouth. Then silence. I went downstairs. I don't know why. Maybe I thought someone was hurt. Maybe I was just curious. But I went down to the garage and I saw. The front of Trevor's black Audi was destroyed. The hood was crumpled like aluminum foil. The windshield had a massive spiderweb crack with something dark and wet in the center of it. The headlight on the passenger side was completely gone, just a jagged hole where it used to be. And there was blood, so much blood, on the bumper, on the hood, smeared across the cracked windshield. Some of it was already drying, turning dark brown at the edges. My brother was leaning against the wall with his hands over his face. His shirt was soaked with sweat. My father was standing next to the car with his hand on the hood like he was trying to steady himself. My mother was the only one who looked at me when I walked in. Her face was white. Her eyes were wide and glassy. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she looked at my father. "Call someone," Dad said to her. His voice was steady, but quiet. Too quiet. "Find out what happened. Find out if anyone saw anything." Mom pulled out her phone and left the garage. I could hear her footsteps going upstairs. Dad turned to Trevor. "Tell me exactly what happened. Everything. Don't leave anything out." Trevor's hands were shaking when he lowered them from his face. "I was at Kyle's house. We were just hanging out. I had a few drinks, maybe more than a few. I don't know. I wasn't keeping track. I thought I was fine to drive. I felt fine." His voice cracked. "I was coming down Maple Street and the light was yellow, so I sped up to make it through and this guy just stepped into the street. He came out of nowhere, Dad. I didn't even see him until I hit him." "Did you stop?" Dad asked. Trevor shook his head. His whole body was shaking now. "I panicked. I just kept driving. I thought maybe he was okay. Maybe it wasn't that bad. But then I got home and I saw the car and..." He gestured at the blood on the windshield. "I think I killed him, Dad. I think he's dead." The words hung in the air. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I stood in the doorway trying to process what I was hearing, trying to understand what I was seeing. My brother had hit someone with his car. My brother had been driving drunk. My brother had killed someone and driven away. And my parents were standing in the garage, trying to figure out what to do about it instead of calling the police. Mom came back downstairs. Her face was even whiter than before. "It's all over the news," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Maple Street and 4th Avenue. Hit and run. Male victim mid-40s. Critical condition when they transported him. They're asking for witnesses." She looked at Trevor. "Did anyone see you leave Kyle's house?" Trevor shook his head. "I don't think so. Everyone was inside. I left out the back." Dad nodded slowly. He was thinking. I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Okay. We can work with this. Nobody saw him leave. The accident happened after midnight. Maple Street doesn't have cameras. If nobody saw the car, someone might have seen the car," I said. All 3 of them turned to look at me like they'd forgotten I was there. "What are you doing down here?" Mom asked. "I heard Trevor come home. I heard you scream." Dad walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "Go back to your room, Cameron. This doesn't concern you." But I couldn't move. I was staring at the blood on the car, at my brother slumped against the wall, at my parents standing there like they were planning a cover-up instead of doing the right thing. "He needs to call the police," I said. "He needs to turn himself in." Trevor made a sound like a wounded animal. "Cameron, please. I can't go to prison. I can't. You killed someone." My voice came out louder than I intended. "You were driving drunk and you hit someone and you drove away. You have to call the police. That's what you're supposed to do." Dad's grip on my shoulder tightened. Not enough to hurt, but enough to make his point. "Cameron, listen to me very carefully. Your brother made a terrible mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. But calling the police right now isn't going to help anyone. The victim is already in the hospital. Turning Trevor in won't change that. It might save his life," I said. "If Trevor tells them what happened, they can look for evidence. They can send your brother to prison for 10 years. Dad interrupted. "Is that what you want? You want your brother to go to prison?" I looked at Trevor, at my older brother who'd taught me to throw a football, who'd helped me with my college applications, who'd driven me to school every morning for 2 years, who was now covered in someone else's blood. I want him to do the right thing, I said quietly. Mom stepped forward. She took my face in her hands and looked into my eyes. The right thing is protecting this family. Trevor's whole life is ahead of him. He has a scholarship to Stanford. He has a future. One mistake can't be allowed to destroy all of that. He killed someone, I said again. Why did I have to keep saying it? Why weren't they hearing me? We don't know that, Dad said. The news said critical condition, not dead. He might survive. And even if he doesn't, sending Trevor to prison won't bring him back. It will just destroy 2 lives instead of 1. I pulled away from Mom's hands. What are you saying? You're just going to pretend this didn't happen? Dad's jaw tightened. I'm saying we need to be smart about this. We need to think about what's best for everyone involved. And what's best is for Trevor to get the help he needs without throwing away his entire future. Help? He needs to face consequences. He will face consequences, Mom said. Private consequences. Therapy, substance abuse treatment, whatever he needs. But he doesn't need a criminal record. He doesn't need to go to prison. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were my parents. The same people who'd grounded me for a month when I got caught cheating on a history test. The same people who'd made Trevor return a video game he'd shoplifted when he was 12 and apologized to the store manager in person. Now they were standing in the garage talking about covering up vehicular manslaughter, like it was a parking ticket. Someone saw the car, Dad said suddenly. He was looking at his phone. It's on the news. They have a description. Black sedan, damaged front end, fled the scene heading east on Maple Street. The room went cold. Trevor's face crumpled. They're going to find me. They're going to figure out it was me. Not if we're smart, Dad said. But his voice had changed. The steady confidence was gone. Now he sounded scared. Mom was pacing. We can't hide the car. If they're looking for a black sedan with front-end damage, they'll find it. Every police department in the county will be looking. We need a different plan. What kind of plan? Trevor asked. His voice was small and desperate. Mom stopped pacing. She looked at Dad. Dad looked at me. And I knew. I knew before anyone said anything. I knew what they were thinking, what they were about to ask. Cameron, Dad said slowly, you have your learner's permit. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The beginning of an argument. So? I said. But my heart was already racing because I understood where this was going. You're 17. If you were driving, if you made a mistake, the consequences would be different. Juvenile court instead of adult court. A sealed record instead of a permanent one. You'd probably get probation, community service, maybe a suspended license, but you wouldn't go to prison. The garage tilted. The walls seemed to close in. You want me to say I was driving? Dad took a step toward me. I want you to help your brother. I want you to think about what happens if Trevor goes to prison. His life is over. Stanford, his scholarship, everything he's worked for. Gone. But if you say you were driving, we can minimize the damage. You're a minor. You don't have a criminal record. The courts are more lenient with first-time offenders. I wasn't driving. My voice echoed off the garage walls. Trevor was driving. Trevor was drunk. Trevor killed someone. And drove away. Lower your voice, Mom hissed. She glanced at the door like the neighbors might hear through 2 walls and a closed garage. Do you want everyone to know what happened? Yes. I want the police to know what happened. I want the person Trevor hit to get justice. Trevor was crying again. Cameron, please, I'm begging you. I can't go to prison. I can't. You don't know what it's like in there. Do you know what they do to people like me? I won't survive it. You should have thought about that before you got behind the wheel drunk. The words came out cold and hard. I barely recognized my own voice. Dad grabbed my arm. Not gentle this time. Hard enough that I couldn't pull away. Listen to me. This family is not going to be destroyed because of one mistake. Trevor made a bad decision. A very bad decision. But he's still your brother. He's still part of this family. And we protect family. That's what we do. Not like this. I tried to pull my arm free, but Dad's grip tightened. We're not asking you to lie under oath. We're not asking you to commit perjury. We're just asking you to say you were driving. One statement to the police. That's all. You tell them you took Trevor's car without permission. You had an accident. You panicked and drove home. Simple story. Easy to remember. And it saves your brother's life. It's not just one statement, I said. It's a lie. A lie about someone dying. A lie that lets Trevor walk away like nothing happened. Mom's voice was sharp now. Cutting. Trevor won't walk away like nothing happened. He'll live with this guilt for the rest of his life. But he'll live, Cameron. He'll have a chance to make something of himself. To do good in the world. To be better. If he goes to prison, that chance is gone. He'll come out broken and unemployable and he'll never recover. Is that what you want for your brother? I looked at Trevor. Really looked at him. He was 20 years old. 6'2", broad shoulders, captain. Of his high school football team. Valedictorian of his graduating class. Smart, charming, good-looking, everything I wanted to be. And now he was huddled against the garage wall, sobbing like a child, because he'd killed someone and couldn't face the consequences. What about the person he hit? I asked quietly. What about his family? Don't they deserve to know what happened? Don't they deserve justice? Justice won't bring him back, Dad said. His voice was softer now, gentler. The way he used to talk to me when I was little and had nightmares. Nothing we do will bring him back, but we can choose whether one tragedy becomes two. We can choose whether this family survives or falls apart. Cameron, I know this is hard. I know it's not fair. But sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes we have to make impossible choices. And I'm asking you, as your father, to help your brother. Please. The word please broke something inside me. My father never said please. My father gave orders. My father made decisions and expected everyone to follow them. But now, he was standing in front of me with desperate eyes, asking me to sacrifice myself to save my brother. If I do this, I heard myself say. The words felt like they were coming from someone else. If I say I was driving, what happens to me? Relief flooded Mom's face. Nothing bad, I promise. We'll get you the best lawyer money can buy. Someone who specializes in juvenile cases. We'll plead it down to reckless driving, maybe vehicular manslaughter with mitigating circumstances. You'll get probation, some community service. Your record will be sealed when you turn 18. It won't affect your college applications. It won't affect anything. And Trevor? Mom and Dad exchanged a look. Trevor goes to Stanford like he planned, Dad said. He gets therapy. He never touches alcohol again. He makes something of his life. And someday, when enough time has passed, he finds a way to make amends for what happened tonight. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe this would work out the way they said, that I'd take the blame, get a slap on the wrist, and everything would go back to normal. But somewhere deep inside, in a place I didn't want to look too closely, I knew I was making a mistake. I knew this would cost me more than they were saying. I knew I was trading my future for Trevor's. But what choice did I have? Trevor was my brother. My parents were asking me to save him, and I'd been raised to believe that family came first, that you sacrificed for the people you loved, that loyalty meant something. Okay, I said. The word came out as barely a whisper. I'll do it. Trevor lunged forward and wrapped his arms around me. Thank you. Thank you. God, Cameron, thank you so much. I'll never forget this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. But even as he said it, even as he held me, I could feel the lie in his words. This wasn't something he'd spend his life making up to me. This was something he'd spend his life trying to forget. Dad called a lawyer at 2 a.m. Martin Shepard, a defense attorney who specialized in DUI cases and vehicular crimes. He arrived at our house 45 minutes later in a suit that probably cost more than my car. He listened to the story my parents told him, that I'd taken Trevor's car without permission, that I'd been driving alone, that I'd hit someone and panicked and fled the scene. He didn't ask if it was true. He didn't ask any questions that would force them to admit they were lying. He just nodded and took notes and told me exactly what to say. You took the car around 11:30 p.m. Your brother was asleep. You wanted to drive to a friend's house to pick up something you'd left there. You've been practicing with your learner's permit and you felt confident enough to make a short trip alone. You were going the speed limit. The man stepped into the street suddenly. You didn't see him until it was too late. You hit the brakes but couldn't stop in time. You panicked. You knew you'd done something terrible and you were scared. So you drove home. You didn't tell anyone. You went to your room and tried to pretend it didn't happen. Do you understand? I nodded. Martin Shepard looked at me with eyes that were kind but firm. Cameron, once you tell this story to the police, you can't take it back. Do you understand that? Once you make this statement, you're committed. If you change your story later, it will look like you're lying to cover up what really happened. Your credibility will be destroyed. So I need you to be absolutely certain this is what you want to do before we proceed. I looked at my parents, at Trevor, at Martin Shepard with his expensive suit and his steady voice, at the destroyed car in the garage with blood drying on the windshield. I'm certain, I said. Martin nodded. Then we'll call the police in the morning. You'll turn yourself in. You'll make a statement exactly as I told. I'll be there with you the whole time. Don't elaborate. Don't add details. Just stick to the story. And Cameron, he paused. I know this is frightening, but I've handled hundreds of cases like this. Juvenile defendants with no prior record. Accident rather than intent. The system is designed to rehabilitate young people, not destroy them. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't okay. I went to my room and lay on my bed staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. I kept thinking about David Brennan, about his wife and his 2 daughters, about how they'd gotten a phone call in the middle of the night telling them their husband and father had been hit by a car, about how they were sitting in a hospital waiting room right now, waiting to find out if he would live or die. And I was about to tell them it was my fault. I was about to look them in the eyes and pretend I'd killed their husband and father because my brother was too much of a coward to face what he'd done. The sun rose. Morning came. Dad knocked on my door at 8 o'clock. It's time, he said. I got dressed. Jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, sneakers. Martin Shepard said to look like a normal teenager. Not too formal, not too casual. Just a kid who'd made a terrible mistake. We drove to the police station in silence. Mom sat in the back seat with me and held my hand. Her palm was sweaty. Trevor stayed home. Martin Shepard met us in the parking lot with a briefcase and a reassuring smile. Remember what we talked about, he said. Just stick to the story. I'll handle everything else. The police station smelled like coffee and floor cleaner. The detective who interviewed me was a woman in her 40s with gray hair and tired eyes. Her name was Detective Laura Voss. She sat across from me in a small room with a recording device on the table between us. Martin Shepard sat next to me. My parents waited outside. Detective Voss read me my rights. Then she asked me to tell her what happened. I told her the story. Every word exactly as Martin Shepard had coached me. I took Trevor's car without permission around 11:30 p.m. I was driving to a friend's house. The man stepped into the street suddenly. I hit the brakes but couldn't stop. I panicked and drove home. I didn't tell anyone. I was scared. Detective Voss listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Cameron, do you understand that the man you hit died this morning?" The room tilted. My vision blurred. I'd known it was possible. I'd known it was likely. But hearing the words spoken out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I didn't mean to," I whispered. "I know you didn't," Detective Voss said. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "I can see you're scared. I can see you feel terrible about what happened. But I need you to understand something. David Brennan was a good man. He was a father. He was walking home from work when you hit him. His family is devastated. They want answers. They want justice. And right now, you're the only person who can give them that." I nodded. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. "I'm going to ask you some questions," Detective Voss continued. "And I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that?" Martin Shepard put his hand on my arm. "A warning. Don't say anything that contradicts the story." I nodded again. Detective Voss pulled out a notepad. "You said you took your brother's car without permission. Does your brother usually let you drive his car?" "Sometimes," I said, "when he's with me, but not alone." "Did your brother know you took the car that night?" "No, he was asleep." "What time did you leave the house?" "Around 11:30. "And what time did the accident happen?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe midnight?" Detective Voss wrote something down. "You said you were driving to a friend's house to pick something up." "What friend?" I gave her a name. "Kyle Rosario, Trevor's friend, the one whose house Trevor had really been at that night." "And what were you picking up?" "A textbook. I'd left it there a few days earlier." Detective Voss nodded. "Kyle Rosario lives on the south side of town. The accident happened on Maple Street, which is in the opposite direction from Kyle's house. Can you explain that?" Martin Shepard leaned forward. "My client may have gotten confused about the exact location in his state of panic. He's a 17-year-old boy who just learned he killed someone. I think we can allow for some confusion about geography." Detective Voss looked at Martin, then back at me. "Were you drinking that night, Cameron?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Because the accident happened after midnight on a Friday night. That's when most teenage drinking occurs." "I wasn't drinking." My voice was steady. That part, at least, was true. "Did you consume any drugs or alcohol in the hours before the accident?" "No." Detective Voss stared at me for a long moment. I could see her trying to decide if she believed me, trying to decide if my story made sense. Finally, she said, "I'm going to recommend that the prosecutor charge you with vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. Given your age and lack of prior record, you'll probably be tried in juvenile court. But I want you to understand the seriousness of what you've done. A man is dead, his family is destroyed, and nothing you say or do will change that." I nodded. I understood. I understood better than she knew. They arrested me. Handcuffs, fingerprints, mugshot. I was 17 years old, and I was being processed like a criminal because I was covering for my brother. They held me for 6 hours before Martin Shepard got me released on bail. My parents paid $50,000 to get me out. We drove home in silence. Trevor was waiting in the living room when we got there. He stood up when I walked in. His eyes were red from crying. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I walked past him to my room and locked the door. I didn't come out for the rest of the day. Over the next 3 weeks, I learned what it meant to confess to a crime I didn't commit. The news ran my name and my mugshot. 17-year-old Cameron Whitmore charged with vehicular manslaughter in death of local physical therapist. My school called my parents for a meeting about my behavioral issues. Half my friends stopped talking to me. The other half asked questions I couldn't answer. "Why were you driving alone? Why didn't you stop? What were you thinking?" David Brennan's wife released a statement asking for the maximum penalty. She said I'd stolen her husband, stolen her children's father, stolen their future. She said she wanted me to suffer the way her family was suffering. She wanted me to pay for what I'd done. I read her statement sitting in my room with my door locked. I read it 5 times. Then I threw up in the bathroom and couldn't stop crying. This woman hated me. This woman wanted me in prison. And I couldn't even defend myself because I'd promised to protect my brother. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after the accident. Martin Shepard filed motions to have the case handled in juvenile court, to allow a plea deal, to minimize the charges. He was good at his job. He was expensive, and he was good, and he was working to get me the lightest possible sentence for a crime I didn't commit. The night before the hearing, Dad sat me down in his study. "Cameron, I want you to know how proud I am of you," he said. "What you're doing for Trevor, for this family, it takes real courage." I stared at him. Proud? He was proud of me for lying to the police? For taking the blame for someone's death? "Mr. Shepard thinks we can get you a plea deal," Dad continued. "Juvenile detention, maybe a year, possibly less with good behavior. Your record will be sealed when you turn 18. It will be like it never happened." "Except it did happen," I said. quietly. And I'll know it for the rest of my life. Dad's expression softened. I know this is hard. I know it doesn't feel fair. But someday you'll understand that we did what was necessary. Trevor has so much potential, Cameron. He's going to do great things with his life. Important things. And you're the reason he gets that chance. The hearing happened on a Thursday morning in March. I wore a suit Martin Shepard had bought for me. Navy blue, white shirt, conservative tie. Look respectful, he'd said. Look remorseful. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Helen Kowalski. She'd been on the juvenile court bench for 23 years. Martin Shepard said she was fair, but firm. She didn't go easy on kids who thought they could get away with anything. But she believed in rehabilitation over punishment. The prosecutor read the charges. Vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of an accident, driving without a licensed adult present. Martin Shepard entered a plea of guilty to all charges. Then he gave his speech about me, about how I was a good kid who'd made a terrible mistake, about how I'd never been in trouble before, about how I was devastated by what happened and wanted nothing more than to make amends. He showed the judge my school records, my grades, my volunteer work, letters from teachers saying I was responsible and trustworthy. Judge Kowalski listened without expression. When Martin finished, she looked at me. Cameron, stand up, please. I stood. My legs were shaking. Do you understand the severity of what you've done? Yes, Your Honor. A man is dead because of your actions. His wife is now a widow. His daughters will grow up without a father. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. And yet you chose to flee the scene instead of calling for help. You chose to save yourself instead of staying to take responsibility. Why? I opened my mouth, closed it. What was I supposed to say? That I was scared? That I panicked? That I was 17 and didn't know what to do? All of it was true for Trevor, not for me, but I couldn't say that. I was scared, I finally said. I knew I'd done something terrible and I didn't want to face it. Judge Kowalski was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Fear is not an excuse for cowardice. Fear is not an excuse for leaving a man to die on the street while you ran away to protect yourself. I've read the statements from Mr. Brennan's family. I've seen the impact of your actions. And I've considered the fact that you're a 17-year-old boy with no prior criminal record who made a catastrophic error in judgment. She paused. I'm sentencing you to 18 months in juvenile detention. You'll be eligible for early release after 12 months with good behavior. Additionally, you'll serve 200 hours of community service upon release, and you'll attend mandatory counseling for substance abuse and trauma. Your driver's license will be suspended until you're 21. Do you understand? 18 months. 18 months in juvenile detention for something I didn't do. Martin Shepard had said maybe a year, possibly less, but Judge Kowalski had given me 18 months. I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Do you have anything to say to the Brennan family? She gestured to the back of the courtroom. I turned and saw them for the first time. David Brennan's wife, Sarah. She was in her early 40s with dark hair and haunted eyes. Next to her were two girls, maybe 13 and 15. They were holding hands. All three of them were staring at me with expressions of pure hatred. I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to tell them it wasn't me. I wanted to tell them to look at my brother, to investigate him, to make him pay for what he'd done. But I couldn't. I'd made a promise. So instead I said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. I know nothing I say can bring your husband and father back. I know I've caused you unimaginable pain. I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. Sarah Brennan stood up. Her voice was cold and sharp. You're not sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you have to face consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did. If you were sorry, you would have stopped. You would have called for help. You would have done something, anything, to save my husband's life. But you didn't. You ran away like a coward. And now he's dead, and you get to walk out of here in 18 months and go on with your life like nothing happened. She was right. She was absolutely right. Except I hadn't been the one driving. I hadn't been the one who ran away. But I couldn't tell her that. Judge Kowalski banged her gavel. Mrs. Brennan, I understand your anger. But this hearing is concluded. Cameron Whitmore will be remanded to the Riverside Juvenile Detention Center immediately. 2 officers came forward. They put handcuffs on me again. My mother was crying in the front row. My father had his arm around her. Trevor wasn't there. He'd stayed home because Martin Shepard said it would look better if the family wasn't making this into a spectacle. They took me away in a van. No goodbyes, no last words, just handcuffs and a van and an hour-long drive to a facility that would be my home for the next 18 months. Riverside Juvenile Detention Center was a low brick building surrounded by fences and guard towers. Inside, it smelled like industrial cleaner and sweat. They processed me like the police had. Fingerprints, photographs, medical exam. Then they gave me a uniform, gray sweatpants, gray t-shirt, white sneakers, and assigned me to a cell. It was 8 by 10 feet. Concrete walls, metal bunk bed, small desk, toilet in the corner with no privacy. My cellmate was a kid named Jorge Delgado. He was 16, serving time for assault. He took one look at me and said, "You don't look like you belong here." "I don't," I said quietly. Jorge laughed. "Yeah, nobody does. That's what everyone says." He was right. In the weeks that followed, I learned that almost everyone in Riverside claimed to be innocent or misunderstood or set up. Nobody wanted to admit they'd done what they were accused of, but I actually was innocent, and I couldn't tell anyone. The days blurred together. Wake up at 6, breakfast in the cafeteria, classes in the morning, math, English, basic job skills training, lunch, recreation time in the yard, more classes, dinner, free time until lights out at 9. Every day the same routine, every day the same walls, the same faces, the same crushing knowledge that I was here because I'd sacrificed myself for my brother. My parents visited once a week. They brought me books and snacks and updates on life outside. Trevor's doing great at Stanford, Mom said during one visit. He's already made Dean's List. He joined a business fraternity. He's really thriving. I nodded and said nothing. What was I supposed to say? I'm so glad the brother who killed someone and let me take the blame is thriving while I'm in juvenile detention? Trevor never visited. Not once in 18 months. He sent letters. Long letters full of apologies and promises. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'll never forget what you did for me. When you get out, I'll make everything up to you. I'll help you get into a good college. I'll help you find a job. I'll spend the rest of my life being the brother you deserve. I burned the first letter in the bathroom sink. After that, I just threw them away without reading them. 4 months into my sentence, I had my first meeting with a counselor. Her name was Ms. Patricia Drummond. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She sat across from me in a small office and said, Cameron, I've read your file. Vehicular manslaughter, first offense, good kid with a bright future who made one terrible mistake. You're a model inmate. You follow the rules, you stay out of trouble, you do your work. But you're not talking to anyone. You're not participating in group therapy. You're not dealing with what happened. I'm dealing with it, I said. Ms. Drummond shook her head. You're surviving. That's not the same as dealing. You need to process what you did. You need to confront the guilt, the shame, the anger. You need to work through this so you don't carry it with you forever. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to tell her I didn't do it, that I was covering for someone else, that the guilt and shame and anger I was feeling was because I'd been manipulated into taking the blame for my brother's crime. But I couldn't. I'm fine, I said. I just want to serve my time and get out. Ms. Drummond looked at me for a long moment. You're not fine, Cameron, and the longer you pretend you are, the worse it's going to get. She was right. By month 6, I wasn't sleeping. I'd lie awake on my bunk staring at the ceiling thinking about David Brennan, about his wife and daughters, about the life he'd had and the future that had been stolen from him. I'd think about Trevor at Stanford, going to parties, joining clubs, living the life I should have been living, and I'd think about what I'd done, what I'd agreed to do, how I'd looked Sarah Brennan in the eyes and lied to her, how I'd stood in front of a judge and pled guilty to a crime I didn't commit, how I'd traded my freedom, my future, my integrity for my brother's comfort. I started having nightmares. David Brennan standing in the middle of the street, the car hitting him, his body flying through the air. But in the dreams, I was driving. I was behind the wheel. I was the one who killed him. I'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, unable to tell the difference between the lie I was living and the truth I was hiding. By month 9, I was seeing Ms. Drummond 3 times a week. She kept pushing me to open up, to talk about the accident, to process the trauma. But how could I process trauma from something I didn't do? You're carrying something, she said during one session. Something you're not saying. I can see it in your eyes. Whatever it is, you need to let it out. You need to tell someone. I almost did. I almost told her everything. But then I thought about my parents, about the promises I'd made, about how they'd told me this would all be worth it, that Trevor would make something of his life, that my sacrifice would mean something. So I kept quiet. I got out after 14 months, early release for good behavior. They gave me back my clothes, the jeans and gray t-shirt I'd been wearing when they processed me, and handed me a bus ticket home. My parents picked me up at the station. Mom hugged me for a long time. Dad shook my hand and said he was proud of me. Trevor wasn't there. He's at Stanford, Mom explained. He wanted to be here, but he has finals this week. He sent his love. I moved back into my bedroom. Same posters on the walls, same desk, same window looking out at the street. But everything felt different. I felt different. Smaller, harder. Like I'd left part of myself behind at Riverside and couldn't figure out how to get it back. I'd missed my entire senior year of high school. My friends had graduated without me. I'd have to go back to school in the fall with kids a year younger than me, kids who knew exactly who I was and what I'd done. My parents had a plan, of course. We'll tell people you were sick, Dad said. A medical issue that required treatment. Nobody needs to know where you really were. Everyone already knows, I said. My name was in the news. My mugshot was on TV. Everyone knows I killed someone. Mom flinched at the word killed. You don't have to put it that way. That's what I pled guilty to. Vehicular manslaughter. That's what it says on my record. Your record is sealed, Dad reminded me. When you turn 18 in 2 months, it will be like it never happened. Except it did happen, I said. And I know it. And you know it. And Trevor knows it. Trevor came home that summer. He walked into the house with a duffel bag and a smile and arms open for a hug like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just spent 14 months in juvenile detention for his crime. Cam, God, it's so good to see you. You look great. I didn't hug him back. I stood in the doorway with my arms at my sides and stared at him. He looked healthy, tan, well-fed, happy. He looked like someone whose life was going exactly the way he'd planned. I brought you something, Trevor said. He reached into his bag and pulled out a Stanford hoodie. Thought you might want some college gear, and I've been talking to the admissions office. They have a program for students with extenuating circumstances. I think I can help you get in next year. I'm not going to Stanford, I said quietly. Trevor's smile flickered. Okay, sure, whatever school you want. I just thought, I'm not going anywhere Trevor went. I'm not following in your footsteps. I'm not living in your shadow. Cam, come on. Don't be like that. Don't be like what? Angry? Resentful? You let me go to juvenile detention for something you did. You let me take the blame while you went to Stanford and joined a fraternity and had the time of your life. What exactly should I be? Trevor's face hardened. I didn't let you do anything. You chose to help me. You made that choice. I was 17 years old. Mom and Dad pressured me. You begged me. What choice did I have? You could have said no. The words hung between us, cold and final. You could have said no, Trevor repeated. But you didn't. You agreed to help me. You agreed to take the blame. So don't act like I forced you into anything. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to grab him by his Stanford hoodie and slam him against the wall and make him understand what he'd taken from me. But I didn't. I just turned and walked away. That night, I started looking for jobs. I needed money. I needed independence. I needed to build a life that didn't depend on my parents or my brother or anyone who'd been part of what happened. I found work at a warehouse loading trucks. Night shift, minimum wage, no questions asked. The manager didn't care about my background as long as I showed up on time and did the work. I saved every dollar. I opened a bank account my parents didn't have access to. I made plans to move out the day I turned 18. But 2 weeks before my birthday, Detective Laura Voss showed up at our house. She knocked on the door at 7 in the morning. Dad answered. I heard him say, Detective, is something wrong? Then I heard her voice. I need to speak with Cameron. Is he home? I came downstairs. Detective Voss was standing in the entryway with a folder in her hands. She looked at me with the same tired eyes I remembered from the police station 14 months ago. Cameron, I need to ask you some questions. Can we talk privately? Dad stepped forward. He doesn't have to answer anything without a lawyer present. His case is closed. He served his time. I'm not here to arrest him, Detective Voss said. I'm here because new evidence has come to light in David Brennan's case. Evidence that suggests Cameron's story might not have been entirely accurate. My heart stopped. Dad's face went pale. What kind of evidence? Can we talk inside? Detective Voss asked. She wasn't asking. She was telling. We sat in the living room. Mom came downstairs in her bathrobe. Trevor emerged from his bedroom looking confused and half asleep. Detective Voss opened her folder and spread several photographs on the coffee table. These are surveillance photos from a gas station 3 blocks from the accident scene, she said. Time-stamped at 11:47 p.m. on the night David Brennan was killed. They show a black Audi pulling into the station. The driver gets out to pump gas, and the driver is not Cameron Whitmore. She pointed to one of the photos. It was grainy but clear enough. Trevor, standing next to his car at a gas station. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., just minutes before the accident. The gas station footage was corrupted, Detective Voss continued. We couldn't access it during the initial investigation, but the owner recently replaced his security system and found the old footage backed up on an external drive. He called us last week. She looked at Trevor. That's you in the photo, isn't it, Trevor? Trevor didn't answer. His face had gone white. And this, Detective Voss pulled out another photo, is a receipt from that same gas station. Time-stamped 11:49 p.m. Credit card purchase. The card belongs to Trevor Whitmore. Dad stood up. This doesn't prove anything. Cameron said he took Trevor's car. Trevor could have driven it earlier in the evening. Cameron said he took the car around 11:30 p.m. while Trevor was asleep. Detective Voss corrected. But these photos show Trevor using the car at 11:47 p.m. So, either Cameron lied about when he took the car, or Cameron didn't take the car at all. She looked at me. Which is it, Cameron? I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. My mind was racing. They'd found evidence. Real evidence. Evidence that proved Trevor was driving. Evidence that could finally tell the truth. Cameron, Detective Voss said gently, I've been doing this job for 22 years. I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of confessions, a lot of guilty people trying to avoid consequences. And I've seen innocent people take the fall for others. Your case never sat right with me. 17-year-old kid with no record, no history of reckless behavior, suddenly commits vehicular manslaughter and flees the scene. Your story was clean, too clean, like someone had coached you on exactly what to say. My client provided a truthful statement. Martin Shepard had told me to say if I was ever questioned. But Martin Shepard wasn't here, and I was so tired of lying. I need you to tell me the truth, Detective Voss said. Not the story you told me 14 months ago. The real truth. Were you driving the car that night? I looked at my parents, at Trevor, at the family I'd sacrificed everything to protect. They were all staring at me with the same desperate expression. Don't tell. Keep the secret. Protect the family. But I was done protecting them. No, I said quietly. I wasn't driving. Mom gasped. Dad stood up like he was going to stop me. Trevor's face crumpled. Detective Voss leaned forward. Then who was? Trevor was driving. He'd been at a party at Kyle Rosario's house. He was drunk. He hit David Brennan on Maple Street and didn't stop. He came home and told my parents what happened. They decided I should take the blame because I was a minor, and Trevor had a scholarship to Stanford. The words poured out. Everything. The garage, the blood on the car, the pressure from my parents, the lawyer coaching me on what to say, the promise that I'd get probation and my record would be sealed. Detective Voss listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Cameron, do you understand what you're telling me? You're confessing that you lied to the police, that you obstructed justice, that you committed perjury in court. I understand. These are serious crimes. You could face additional charges. I don't care," I said, and I meant it. I'm done lying. I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it. Trevor killed David Brennan. Trevor should be the one in prison, not me. Trevor finally found his voice. "Cam, what are you doing? We agreed. You said you'd help me. You agreed to make it up to me. You said you'd spend your life being the brother I deserved. Where were you for the past 14 months? Where were you when I was in Riverside? You didn't visit. You didn't call. You went to Stanford and had the time of your life while I rotted in detention. I was trying to move on. I was trying to build the life you saved. I didn't save your life. I sacrificed mine. There's a difference." Detective Voss stood up. "Trevor Whitmore, I'm placing you under arrest for vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of an accident, and obstruction of justice." Trevor jumped to his feet. No, you can't. I was a minor when it happened. I was 17, the same age Cameron was. If he got juvenile court, then so do I. You're not 17 anymore," Detective Voss said calmly. "You're 21. The statute of limitations hasn't expired, and new evidence means we can reopen the case and charge you as an adult for crimes committed when you were a minor. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Dad stepped between Detective Voss and Trevor. "Wait, you can't do this. Our lawyer will fight this. You don't have enough evidence. I have surveillance footage showing Trevor at the gas station minutes before the accident. I have a credit card receipt proving he was driving the car. I have Cameron's testimony that Trevor admitted to hitting David Brennan. And I have 14 months of evidence that your family conspired to obstruct justice. That's more than enough." She pulled out handcuffs. "Trevor, turn around." Trevor looked at our parents. "Dad, do something." Dad opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't know what to say. Mom was crying. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't do this. He's our son." "So is Cameron," Detective Voss said sharply. "And you let him go to prison for something he didn't do. You coached him to lie. You hired a lawyer to help cover it up. You're lucky I'm not arresting all of you." She cuffed Trevor's hands behind his back. He was crying now. Real tears. Not the manipulative kind from the garage that night. These were tears of genuine terror. "Cameron, please," Trevor said as Detective Voss led him toward the door. "Please tell her you made it up. Tell her you were lying. Please." I stood up. I walked over to him and looked him in the eyes. "David Brennan's wife thought I killed her husband. His daughters thought I killed their father. I've spent 14 months living with that guilt. Now it's your turn." Detective Voss took Trevor outside. I watched through the window as she put him in the back of her police car. My parents stood in the living room in shock. Finally, Dad turned to me. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Yes," I said. "I told the truth. You've destroyed this family. You've destroyed your brother's life. He destroyed his own life. And mine. I'm just making sure everyone knows it." Mom's voice was sharp, cutting. "After everything we did for you, after all the money we spent on lawyers, after we protected you, after we gave you a second chance, this is how you repay us? You didn't give me a second chance. You manipulated me into taking the blame for Trevor's crime. You stole 14 months of my life so Trevor could go to Stanford, and you were never going to let me forget it." Dad's hands were shaking. "If you testify against Trevor, if you put him in prison, you are no longer our son. Do you understand? You're done. No more college fund, no more help with anything. You're on your own." "Good," I said. "That's exactly what I want." I went upstairs and packed my things. Everything I owned fit in 2 duffel bags. When I came back down, my parents were sitting on the couch in silence. I walked past them without saying goodbye. I had $400 in my bank account, a warehouse job, and nowhere to live. But I was free, really free, for the first time in 14 months. Trevor's trial took place 6 months later. I testified. I told the jury everything. The party at Kyle's house, Trevor coming home drunk, the blood on the car, my parents pressuring me to confess. The lawyer Martin Shepard hired tried to discredit me. He called me a liar, an attention seeker, a vindictive brother trying to destroy Trevor's life out of jealousy. But the evidence backed up my story. The gas station footage, the credit card receipt, testimony from Kyle Rosario confirming Trevor had been at his party that night and had left drunk around 11:45 p.m. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Trevor guilty on all charges. Judge Helen Kowalski, the same judge who'd sentenced me 14 months earlier, was the one who sentenced Trevor. She looked at him with an expression of disgust. "Trevor Whitmore, you are everything that's wrong with our justice system. You committed a terrible crime, and you let your younger brother take the blame. You watched him go to prison while you went to college. You showed no remorse. no conscience, no honor, and now you stand before me expecting leniency because you're young and you have potential. Well, your brother was young too. Your brother had potential too, and you stole that from him. She sentenced Trevor to 8 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for the first 5 years. Mom collapsed in the courtroom. Dad sat in stunned silence. Trevor was led away in handcuffs, and this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt relief. Sarah Brennan approached me after the sentencing. She'd been in the courtroom for every day of the trial. She'd heard me testify. She'd heard the truth. "Cameron," she said. Her voice was steady but soft. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Yes, I do. I thought you killed my husband. I hated you. I wanted you to suffer. But you were just a kid who was pressured into taking the blame for someone else's crime. I'm sorry for what you went through. I'm sorry for what you went through. Your husband didn't deserve what happened to him. Nobody did." Sarah nodded. "I can't forgive your brother. I'll never be able to forgive him. But I hope you can move forward. I hope you can build a life that isn't defined by what he did." "I'm trying," I said. And I was. I'd gotten my GED while working at the warehouse. I'd applied to community college for the spring semester. I'd moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates who didn't ask questions about my past. I was building something. It was slow and hard, and nothing like the future I'd imagined when I was 17. But it was mine. My parents never contacted me again. No calls, no letters, no attempts at reconciliation. I heard through distant relatives that they'd moved to be closer to Trevor's prison, that they visited him every week, that they were spending all their money on appeals and lawyers trying to get his sentence reduced. They'd chosen Trevor, again, the way they'd always chosen Trevor, and I was finally okay with that, because I'd chosen myself. 5 years later, I was finishing my bachelor's degree in criminal justice at the State University. I'd transferred from community college with a 3.9 GPA. I'd gotten a partial scholarship and worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. I'd started volunteering with an organization that helped exonerated prisoners reintegrate into society. People who'd been wrongly convicted and had served time for crimes they didn't commit. I understood them in a way most people couldn't. Detective Laura Voss became a mentor. She'd been the one who'd encouraged me to study criminal justice, who'd written recommendation letters for my college applications, who'd told me I had a future in law enforcement if I wanted it. "You have a unique perspective," she said during one of our meetings. "You've seen both sides of the system. You know what it's like to be failed by the people who are supposed to protect you. That makes you valuable. That makes you someone who can change things." I didn't know if I could change anything, but I was going to try. Trevor was released after serving 6 years. I didn't go to see him. I didn't write to him. I didn't acknowledge his release in any way. 3 months later, he showed up at my apartment. I opened the door, and there he was, thinner, grayer, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Prison had aged him. "Cam," he said, "can we talk?" "No." I started to close the door. Trevor put his hand out to stop it. "Please, just 5 minutes. I need to say something." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. We stood in the hallway. "I'm sorry," Trevor said. "I'm sorry for everything. For letting you take the blame. For not visiting you. For being a coward. I've had 6 years to think about what I did. To think about what I cost you. And I know there's nothing I can say that will make it right. But I need you to know I'm sorry." "Okay," I said. "You're sorry. Is that all?" Trevor looked at me like he'd been expecting more. Forgiveness, maybe. Or at least a conversation. "I'm trying to start over," he said. "I'm trying to build a new life. It's hard with a criminal record. Nobody wants to hire me. Nobody trusts me. I was hoping maybe you could help me. Maybe put in a word with someone or—" "No," the word came. Out flat and final. "Cameron, please. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the night you asked me to lie for you. You stopped being my brother when you let me go to prison for your crime. You stopped being my brother when you went to Stanford and didn't visit me once in 14 months. Whatever you need now, whatever help you're looking for, you're not getting it from me." Trevor's face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to hate me forever?" "I don't hate you, Trevor. I just don't care about you anymore. There's a difference." I went back inside and closed the door. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't think about him for the rest of my life. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.